Welcome to Your Thoughts, Your Reality with Michael Cole, the podcast that shines a compassionate light on the journey of veterans battling through life's challenges. Michael is a dual elite certified neuroencoding specialist in coaching and keynote training presentations, dedicated to guiding military veterans as they navigate the intricate pathways of post-deployment life. Join him as we delve into the profound realm of neuroencoding science, empowering these brave individuals to conquer universal battles, procrastination, self-doubt, fear, and more. Together, let's uncover the strength within you to re-engage with families and society, forging a new path forward.
Hello, everybody. We have our fan favorite, my friend Danny O'Neill is on today. Danny is a U.S. Army veteran who served with distinction and now advocates for veterans' mental health. He's a founder of multiple nonprofits that empower veterans through service, connection, and purpose. He's a motivational speaker. I mean, this guy goes and talks to kids and schools. It's fantastic. He's a powerful voice with trauma recovery, resilience, and post-service identity. PTSD survivor as well, and thriver, may I just add. Openly sharing his journey through therapy, darkness, and healing. And of course, he's a big person in the community with his Warfighter Overwatch. And of course, he has a kinetic ink tattoo and kinetic ink threads and with wife on mother trucker hats. Is that right?
That's right. Mother trucker hat bar. Yeah.
It's fantastic, man. So if we can really quick, tech issue fixed. Tell us a little more about yourself that maybe people don't know. I know you've been on here multiple times, of course, but share a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me back on. Appreciate you. We love you, Mike, and it's good to see you again. So I was born and raised right here in Northern California. I was born in Stockton. I graduated high school at Grant High School in Sacramento. I grew up in some rough areas. I had some significant adversity and trauma as a kid, and then on 9/11, I signed up for the Army to be a artilleryman, a fire support specialist. Essentially, what I do is go with the infantry and call for bombs when we get in a gunfight. The acronym for our name we have a lot of different names, but Fire Support Team, so they call us Fisters, which is my favorite thing to tell people. It's hilarious, gets very funny reactions, but it's a strenuous job and it cost me a lot of my friends. So I have trauma from that, and I struggle trying to build a life back here in the aftermath of the chaos of war. And I think I've done a fairly good job now. So I like to share my experiences with other people.
Yeah, I think your story, I'm just going to say it needs to be a movie at some point. I mean, truly, Danny, I mean, you are one of those inspirational stories, and that's why I love having you on here, because you'll share the darkness, but you also share the light.
That's right.
And I think that's inspirational. Ooh, it's got chills, man, God bumps. That I think it's so inspirational for our veterans and first responders and their families to know, hey, you know what? Yeah, I can be in the shit. I can be dealing with, as you say, the PTSDs or whatever the case may be, and come out and live.
That's right.
And thrive. And that's really what we're going to talk about, that resilience. Again, we're going to go from the dark to the light like we always try to do on the show, because that's what we need to show our veterans and first responders, et cetera. So with that said, I mean, can you take us back to the first moment you realized you were no longer at war, but still fighting really the battles inside the mind? Because that's what you really hear about, right? It's, I'm back. And a lot of times you don't even know there's, I'm going to say most of the time from my work with veterans, you think you're okay when you first get out, even with all the stuff you went through. And guys, Danny's been through, he's lost people at war and a lot after because of the mind battle. So tell us kind of that, when you realized that difference, hey, shit, something's going on.
So I think even at war, we joked about it because we had been through so much. Right. We joked about he has the PTSDs, which is where you just heard Mike say that's because we joked about it. We thought it was our morbid sense of humor, but we were terrified of what was happening to us. Right. We were changing, and I think it felt scary. It was foreign to us. And so I'll tell you the first moment that I realized something was a little different and I was in survival mode. I didn't know necessarily that's what it was, but I realized it was different, was when I got off the plane back at Fort Hood, Texas. I was in 4th Infantry Division, just finished a year-long deployment where we had lost 9 guys. Now I'm back up 1 week from getting off that plane, or just 4 days essentially from travel. The day we left, November 26th, we lost 2 guys. Captain Hamill was the company commander, and Captain Frazier was the executive officer of Echo Company. They were our engineers, and they were killed hours before we got on a flight. So now all the morale, all the good feelings of I'm gonna go home and have a beer and a steak and, you know, see my family, that evaporated immediately when that happened. We left devastated. And when I got off that plane, I had to give up my M4, my weapon that has kept me alive for the last year through hell.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, even now thinking about that, it was very hard because that felt like my lifeline. And so the good news for me, I suppose, was that the person that I handed that weapon to when I surrendered it or gave it up to go back in the arms room back here in the States was my soldier. His name's Niewiadowski. I called him Niewiadomski for 6 months before someone finally told me we just called him Ski most of the time, or Alphabet. It's too many letters. I give up. Too long, didn't read. But Ski had gotten hit in the neck one night, and he has a scar from his ear down to his collarbone. And he came back early. He's lucky he's alive. It hit his artery, and he's lucky he's alive. But he was the armor when I got home. They had picked him to first off go notify families when their service member was injured or killed. He had to go do those notifications, which was it's a moment to grow up. Unfortunately, it's something you don't want to do, but there's a lot of at least honor. You're going to be the person who's there telling, you know, this family the most devastating news of their life. But he was also our armor because we knew so much about weapons and things like that. So I gave it to him, and I at least felt comfortable that I was giving it to my brother and that he would take care of her, you know. But I also felt naked the moment I gave it to him and left. I felt naked, so I had a lot of guns. I immediately started buying guns and ammo. I felt vulnerable, and I didn't like that.
Right, and that totally makes sense. I mean, you that was a part of you. That was your lifeline.
Yep.
So that absolutely makes sense. So, you know, when you got home, and guys, you know, I always talk about it. There's, you know, for veterans, there's a, in a sense, generally some kind of a, like he was saying, I'm going to call it a honeymoon period, a celebration period, where you go home and you go have that beer and that steak, and you're, you know, you're seeing the family and all that stuff before really kind of reality sets in, right?
Yeah.
You went through that as well, I assume. I mean, I've
Yeah.
never heard of somebody not, to be honest.
So my family wasn't there when I got home, and my
Right.
life was, you know, there was several thousand miles away. My family, you know, was fairly poor. My dad's a Vietnam vet. He didn't like flying on planes, so dad didn't really get on planes. And so, well, I'll tell you, it wasn't just a beer and a steak. I didn't go get beer. I went and got the biggest. There's 2 bottles of one of whiskey and one of vodka that one of the other guys had requested. And I was a sergeant, so I had a house off the base, and we went to my house and we drank it all that night. And I remember sitting there. I couldn't even. It was the only way I was trying to go to sleep, and that wasn't happening. So just drink more and drink more. And we were kind of celebrating being home, but also mourning the death of 2 guys who had just been killed. Instead of getting their hero home, their family got a knock at the door saying they're never coming home. And that was just like, it seemed really heavy. And I'll admit, you know, I've done a lot of training to make sure that I have broad shoulders and carry not only my own weight, but when other people need it. As a leader, it's my job to help them carry their load. And so this was really hard for me it just felt overwhelming. But the honeymoon phase, it didn't last very long.
Yeah, and for you is different. So, and I now that you start talking about that, I didn't say that right. For other soldiers, I'm talking about. There's generally a honeymoon phase. Your honeymoon phase got ruined, my friend.
It did. Well, it did. But the truth is, we saw it everywhere, right? So you go to the clubs with your friends afterwards, because that is that part, right? When I go hang out, I'm going to enjoy these freedoms I just fought for. You know, the only part, the attachment for us was, and my friends died for. It wasn't just the freedoms that I fought for. My brothers died for this. And so I wanted to enjoy that stuff, but I wasn't doing a very good job of it, right? I was
Right.
drinking to cope, and that was much different. I was self-medicating, and it was affecting my life in various ways.
Right.
And I had anger seeping out, all the time. And it was the only emotion I felt comfortable sharing because, what I really wanted to do was break down and cry because I had all this grief, and we didn't grieve and mourn over there. When I remember, Sergeant Pugh's KIA day is in 2 days, right? It's always some Memorial Day. Today is the day that Russo died back here, right? And
Of course.
he ran over the IED that was supposed to kill him. The trigger man was hitting the button and it started sparking because they just ran it over and broke it. It was the craziest thing ever. They got very lucky.
Right.
And he came home and he was on pain medications. And then the VA told me he was a drug addict. So he went to the streets to get him and he ended up dying of an overdose. And it just like, it was unnecessary to me. He survived hell. And now here he is dying back here. So for me, like the suicides that started, the things that were happening back here fairly quickly, it first off, that made me feel like we were being that stigma that people talk about with vets, right? The anger, the alcohol, the violence, the addictions that coincide with, little to no coping skills. It's just the military did a very bad job of helping us return home, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's why I do what I do, right? For my dad,
Yep.
because my dad, same exact thing till about a
Yeah.
year before he died. The VA, and I'm not going to get on this for a long time, but the VA does, I think, what they can do. They do, and the military does a very good job conditioning people to go do what they need to go do
Yep.
and stay in the fight because you have to, or the person next to you, your brother dies or,
Yep.
or sister dies or hurt, whatever the case may be. But they don't do a great job conditioning on the way out. And that's why suicide rates, you see them with the first 10 years, highest rates, followed by what? The second 10 years, followed by the third 10 years, if they make it that far.
Yep.
So that's why I think your story is so important. And that's why I really focus on that transition period.
Yeah.
When you have a plan, when you have support system, whether that be family or your buddies from the military or whatever the case may be. And there's multiple things, I'm not going to get into it. It changes the game.
100%.
But the military doesn't set you up for that. And it's better than it was. I'll say that. It's better than it was, but we got a long way to go.
It is. And I have way better care than my dad in the Vietnam generation got, right? Nobody spit on me when I came home. Nobody called me a baby killer or called me, horrible names. They had a parade for us and we had a good time, right? It was good. There was pride for my service. And unfortunately, my dad's generation didn't get that. But what I will say is, I walked into my dad getting ready to commit suicide. And I'm lucky he's still alive, right? His dad, my grandfather, was a World War II vet. He did commit suicide when
Right.
my dad got sent to Vietnam. And not just that, but moving forward, for me, I never thought mental health was going to be an issue. I just thought that I was resilient. I was tough. Now, I'll say this. In my early childhood, my mom was a drug addict and my dad had PTSD from Vietnam and his childhood as well. So when being raised in a split family and trauma on both sides, unfortunately, I lived with my mom in my early childhood and I saw a lot of bad things and experienced a lot of bad things. So there's this study, it's called the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, ACEs test. And it was developed by this smart lady over from Berkeley. And I took it one day when I was in college, getting my degree in social work so I could help guys in the aftermath, right? And I got a 10 out of 10 on this thing. And it was rough realizing I think at like 3 of these, you're potentially going to die early because you're going to have chronic disease, heart, all kinds of issues. But not that I don't buy into that, but I feel like that's where I do have a little bit of control. I can make myself healthier. I can process some of my trauma, right? And going through these things, what I've realized is I'm the one who's in control of my life and the direction that it goes, right? And it doesn't mean I'm in control of everything that happens in my life, but I'm in control of how I respond to it, how I let it affect me and my family, because in the beginning, I was a terror to deal with. I could only imagine, before all the tattoos and all that stuff, I had them, but I was very professional. They were hidden by my shirts, and I didn't probably look as crazy as I do now. But what I will say is I acted crazy, right? I looked like a nice person. And I because I didn't want people to get close to me, because people get close to me, they die or they hurt me or things like that. So I didn't want any of that. And so I did things to what I thought was protecting myself, and I was just pushing people away, people who loved me and cared about me. And to be honest, I was an asshole. So I didn't want to be that way anymore. And when I tried to take my own life and I woke up, it's just like waking up on the battlefield. When you're not dead, you better get up and fight, because someone's going to try to kill you again. It just might be yourself. So for me, it was a hard reality that I was going to have to go through this shit and really unpack Pandora's box of trauma. And that meant, unfortunately, even going through my childhood stuff that I didn't ever talk about. And so it's easy to understand how someone comes home from war different, right? But talk about that childhood stuff, man. That was hard for me. Being a warrior was okay for me. Being a little kid and vulnerable was not. I didn't know how to express it or articulate that stuff. And I'm grateful, because now, not only have I learned so much from that, but it made me a better parent, made me more engaged with them, to make sure that because I can't protect them from everything, but my job is to try to prepare them from as much of life as possible. And so far, I think we're doing a pretty good job. My life is much better than it was when I was in that dark spot, ready to take my own life. When my dad was ready to take his own life, when my grandfather was ready to take his own life. And I have family members who have fought in every war since the very beginning, from the Revolutionary War. And it wasn't tradition. It wasn't like I was supposed to go do this. My dad was angry when I did it, because he knew what that meant for my mental health. But the truth is that if I hadn't gone through that stuff, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I'm grateful for that. I do a lot of things to find gratitude, and now I see it more because I pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah, I love that you just said that. It's why do you keep giving me chills, dude? It's good stuff. That's why, because it matters, and it connects. You know what I mean? So many people don't realize, and it's the definitions that you give the experiences. And let's go even with trauma. Okay, I care if it was from a child. I mean, let's call it what it is. Most people have trauma somewhere in their life.
Yep.
And it's the definition that you give it that changes it from being trauma to being, in a sense, something to learn from, or a gift. And a gift, sometimes people have a hard time swallowing it until they process it and realize it years later.
Yep.
Man, if I didn't go through the crap that I went through as a kid, as a teenager, in my 20s, I mean, let's call it what it is. When you look back and you change the belief system and we have a table, we have legs on the table. With this, it's nice and stable with your belief system. And when you start changing those legs of being a victim, or being this or being that, or this was horrible and I'm a victim, to, hey, I learned something from it. It's actually something that I can help people with, and exactly what you do and have done in your life. When you can switch that around, the trauma is redefined and it's not trauma anymore. Until then, what happens is it keeps spinning in your brain. I'm not going to get all scientific here. I'll make this quick, but it keeps spinning in your brain. The trauma generally happens once. Now, there are cases, obviously, where there's multiple traumas, but the one that you're focusing on generally happens once. It's you hanging on to it and not redefining it, and it spins around and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's when the problem becomes a bigger problem. Kill the monster when it's small.
That's exactly right. Like if specifically when I talk, like you mentioned earlier, that I go talk to kids, because I want them to understand that sometimes life is unfair and it hands you these really crappy sandwiches that you don't want to eat, right? But we can't avoid those things. And a lot of times that's our response, is avoidance, right? Or running from these problems. And that's why I love the analogy when people talk about buffalo versus cows, right? There's it's kind of this crazy experience. When a storm comes, cows run from it and they continue running, and they're tired and they continue running, but the clouds just keep coming in. But the buffalo, on the other hand, turns and faces the clouds and runs through the storm. Yeah, they get soaking wet and their hair gets matty and they freaking probably stink from being wet and beastly animals. But they get through the storm so much faster because they move into it head first and don't run from it, where it continues to chase them and follow them around like this proverbial rain cloud. Except in this case, it's real. When they run through it and they get to the other side, well, guess what? There's light. There's sunshine. There's a time after the storm, and life is going to bring storms, but it also has plenty of sunny days. And, unless you live in the Pacific Northwest, I happen to live in a place where there's mostly sunny days. And when I remember that, my perspective is gratitude. It's that I have to put hard things in my life now to remain resilient, to remind myself of that warrior spirit that we all have inside of us, right? Like last year, I took 15 guys up Half Dome, and well, 13. Two of them got to the cables and said, "I love you, Danny. I'm not going up that way anymore." And I get it. It can be a scary, daunting task. But putting those things in my life continues to remind me that I am capable of doing hard things. And while my life is much easier than it used to be, right, than it was at war or even as a child, I still have to continue to do things to keep that resilience and remind myself so I can share that with other people that, the hard things that we do in life form our character and our resilience and our ability to deal with adversity, because there's always going to be some sort of obstacle or crap in front of us, but how we respond to that really reveals who we are.
Yeah. I love so many different nuggets you just dropped in that. That was absolutely fantastic. So if you were to go back, and then we're this is just part of where I want to go into, again, the light of it, right? You already started us here with, we're going to move into resilience now, which is really important. If you were to go back to your, I'm going to say 7-year-old self, because that's about when we stop believing everything we're told, and all of the, you can't, blah blah blah, all the crap starts filtering in to start changing our belief systems. If you were to go back to say 6 or 7 years old, what would you tell yourself now? I didn't mean to go real deep on you, man. I'm sorry.
No, it's for me, it's pretty simple, and I've mentioned this before, but it's stay the course. Like, you don't realize where you're being led to, right? And because we want to be, like I said, the only thing I have control over is my life. But sometimes life presents these opportunities or these different pathways, and we take them. Now, sometimes we realize going down that path, it's not the right way, and we need to self-correct, and get back on track. But in the military, as a fister, I'm an expert in land navigation and map reading as well, because I use those maps to call for bombs, right? Grid squares and all that sort of thing, to give coordinates. I help my infantry brothers navigate life after the military. I help my military brothers navigate life after the military. I wasn't a navigator before.
Right.
But now, not only am I a navigator, but I'm an expert in this stuff, right? And the government would tell you the same thing. I'm really good at this. And I spent a lot of time learning how to do it, and walking out in the woods and learning that your pace count changes when you're walking uphill versus downhill or flat terrain. I know how to get around obstacles now. I know how to figure out my path, and I know how to do these things that can be, if you don't know, it can seem hard, right? But so do so many obstacles in our life. They seem hard until you start chipping away at it, until you start getting good at the things that scared you or made you vulnerable, or that you weren't good at, that you had never tried before. And the only way to get better at those things is practice. Practice doesn't make perfect, it makes better. And we want to practice those things, whether it's self-care, because that's community care, whether it's an act of random act of kindness. It's not random, it's intentional. So do those things.
Yeah, I love that. And everybody remember one thing. Like Danny said, practice, doesn't make perfect, it just makes better, right?
That's right.
Repetition is the mother of all skill, right?
Mm-hmm.
Build the muscle with these things that you say, oh, that sucks and I don't want to do it.
That's right.
And here's the thing I'm going to say, I can't help it. I'm a neuroencoder. I have to drop it. Celebrate it. Pat yourself on the back, shake your butt, smile. It releases all the good hormones, and your brain says, oh, I want more of that. And it's easier and easier and easier when you celebrate the little things. Listen, when you were 1 year old, okay, I don't know age on this, but when you were little, you couldn't tie your shoes well. You couldn't tie them at all. But guess what? Your parents kept saying, good job, not, oh, you suck, what are you doing? They celebrated you, and you kept moving forward and made it something that was important to you until you did do it. Now, can you still tie your shoes better? Absolutely. Right? But just celebrate the little things. Be grateful for the little things, like you said earlier.
Well, so, and we call it crawl, walk, run. This is how we learn to do things as a child. We crawl, then we walk, then we run. Now there are a few people who walk first. They literally don't crawl. They get up and walk. But let me tell you a little secret. That's how we do every single thing. First we crawl through it, then we walk through it, and then we can run, right? But we have to do it in that order because, the way they taught me how to be an expert in land navigation was I'll tell you right now, I took for granted how often I got to fly around in a helicopter. So me and the boys, we load up in one of the choppers and they go drop us off somewhere. And then we got to go walk. And I would joke with the pilots, "Hey sir, you mind dropping us off a lot closer? We got 12 clicks to walk, And he's just like, "Nah, no way." So they dropped us off and then I got to navigate with my map and compass and get me to where I'm going. And not just me, but my crew. We have a very important job to do when we get there. So I took that stuff serious. Take your life serious. Be intentional about what you're doing because life was intentional about trying to kill you. Life was intentional about giving you bad coping skills and trauma and all this crap, right? It was serious about that stuff. Those are things that stay with you. And they gave me, survival issues at times. And I still go to therapy every single week, right? Because this is the best gift I could ever give my family and my community is to be a better version of myself. Each and every day, try to improve a little bit, right? The building blocks of life aren't these great far apart rungs. They're closer together. The steps are closer together. You do those small things and it leads to big things. And when I realized like trying to overcome PTSD overnight wasn't going to happen, that it was going to be a slow grind. I've watched my dad do this for 50 years, right? Like, excuse me, fuck that. I can do better. I can do better than that. And so I'm going to. That means that I'm going to do whatever it takes to win this war. And just because I'm not walking through, kicking down doors and doing raids and stuff like that anymore doesn't mean my fights it's just different, but it still requires the same vigor, the same intentionality and the same warrior spirit.
Amen. You just got kicked off Facebook. I'm joking. No. Well, it is
All
what
right,
it is.
stop.
No, no, but seriously, what you just said is so important. It is just keep moving. One step, one step, one step. It's when you stop, it's a problem.
Yep.
Human beings are meant to progress and move forward. They are not meant to stay and because how many people do you see that are just sitting stuck and happy?
So there's this, and I've learned this, unfortunately, I've learned that sometimes people aren't ready for the healing, the process, right? They're not. They want to be, but they're not. And so, there's this, I'm going to screw this up, but there's this quote by Hippocrates, and it says, before you heal someone else, ask that person if they're willing to give up the things that make them sick. And so sometimes we seek those toxic behaviors, relationships, things like that, because that's what we know. Like you said with that table, that's what we're comfortable. That's where we feel stable, even if it's chaotic. I lived a chaotic life as a kid that made me great at war, made me crappy at coming home. And so the things that I had to learn, it was all that stuff was internal. Happiness is an inside job. If I wanted to be happy, it was going to be, it required some stuff from me, right? Exactly. So like your wife just said, the devil, we get comfortable with that stuff versus the devil you don't. And if you're a person out there who's struggling with this stuff and you don't like who you are, maybe you're short-tempered, maybe you're erratic sometimes, maybe you're shut off or closed and avoid things, and maybe who knows how you're dealing with things. But if you don't like that, if you realize that potentially this stems from trauma, I just want you to know that you can overcome this stuff. You can live a great life that isn't doesn't have boundaries by trauma, right? That doesn't control my life or my behavior. And at one point it did. So I just want you guys to know that, if I can do this, you can do this.
I love that. And so we're getting low on time. And I love that you said that because it takes us right into resilience. If you have time, I'd like to go over just a couple of minutes, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, because I think the value is huge. You talked about the stigma earlier about, veterans and drinking and the drugs and, all those things, right? Let me share something, everybody that's listening right now and in the future on the podcast forums. It's not veterans. Get rid of the stigma. It's the human condition.
That's right.
We all stuff too much food in our face when we're trying to mask something. We all drink too much alcohol when we're trying to mask something. Drugs, I mean, you can go down the road with social media and technology and all the different stuff, right? That we get ourselves sidetracked from reality, if you will. So the stigma, it shouldn't be a military thing, guys. It's a human condition. It really is.
Yep.
Yeah. So with that said, let's move into resilience, right? So what are some of the key things that you do or people you know, whatever the case may be? You know what? Not today. I'm getting out of bed. I'm going to go accomplish this. And I know you've touched base on some of it, but I'd like to know some of the little trick secrets, some of the other things that Danny O'Neill does.
Number one, exercise, exercise, exercise. If you exercise, and I'm talking walking for 30 minutes, go outside and walk, you will feel better about yourself. You'll feel like you did something. The commercials back in the 90s or whatever for the Army used to say, we do more by 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock than most people do all day. And what they're talking about is they would make us go run and sing in the morning, which I wanted to move to a later time. I wanted to sleep until 8. They had other ideas. I wasn't in charge. So doing those things, right? I have a home gym in my garage. I built it during COVID. I go down there and I go kick the crap out of myself, and I put adversity in front of me. There's heavy weights. I need to move them. Now I'm getting old. I'm getting beat up. I don't lift as heavy as I used to. I still do plenty of things to make sure that I'm feeling physically fit, that I'm feeling, I just think it's so important, right? That it reduces our stress levels. It boosts our mental health, and so exercise is top of that list.
It does. And let me just say this, because again, brain science, can't help myself. Exactly what you said, because you're releasing the hormones, you're releasing and having less of the bad hormones, the cortisol and all those things, instead of sitting in bed going, oh my God, I can't deal with today. Oh, I hate my boss. I hate this. All those things. Get up and move. Just walking changes the game. And this is something my clients, it's one of the first things I teach my clients. Get out and move. Get out in nature if you can. Put your feet in some grass if you can. But just if you can just do that, like Danny said, it changes the game. And I know, Danny, you say that you don't work hard, or you're not working out as hard as you used to. I've seen the videos, dude. You're always sweating, so don't give me that crap.
Well, I work out hard. I just don't lift as much as I used to. My body says that's probably not. I have to have shoulder surgery, right? But this is me taking care of myself. Before, I would have just continued to ignore it. And I went to the VA and I said, hey, man, something's wrong with my shoulder. And they essentially kind of ignored me. And it was persistent. So I went back like 2.5 months later and they said, all right, we'll send you for an MRI. Well, why didn't you do that when I asked the first time? But they took the MRI and they said, you got a torn labrum and partially torn rotator cuff. And I'm like, all right, well, maybe we can do it in the winter. I need to golf more. I got a few things I'm trying to do. I'm still that guy, but I am going to take care of myself, because that part is important. We always take care of other people and rarely take care of ourselves. And you're number one on this list. When you're on the plane, they tell you to put your mask on before you help someone else. It applies in all facets.
I love that you said that. I was going to say it. Bless you, sir. I literally was thinking, man, how's he going to golf?
Yeah, I don't know.
You'll figure it out.
I will.
You'll just work harder to come back from the surgery. That's what you'll do.
That's exactly what's going to happen. I'm already thinking about it. I already got the bands in there. I'm ready to go.
And that's the resilience. Anything else you want to mention about resilience before we jump off?
Yeah, absolutely. You need to have a support system, right? The people around you need to, first off, you need to have people that hold you accountable. When they see you're sucking or having struggles or whatever, they need to know you well enough. You need to have relationships that are intimate enough for people to call you on your crap and make sure that you're doing the right thing, which is taking care of yourself. And so that is part of our resilience, is having a support system that when I'm unable to carry my full load, I can give a little bit to someone else. I can count on these people, and it doesn't have to be a big circle, right? Quality over quantity.
Yeah, absolutely love it. I think that is super important. And the last thing I just want to add on resilience is literally, you can do it. No, you can do it. Because if you just take that one extra step, doesn't have to be a big step, but just one more step, you get closer to where you want to be.
Yeah, and resilience doesn't happen
2 millimeter
when it goes your way.
That is very true. That is the ultimate statement right there, my friend. That should be a bumper sticker. I like that. All right. With that said, Danny, how do people reach out to you if they want to reach you for public speaking or any of that fun stuff, or just reach out
Yeah.
for Warfighter Overwatch, of course?
So our website for Warfighter Overwatch is warfighteroverwatch.org. My email is danny@warfighteroverwatch.org. You can find us on social media. Kinetic Ink Tattoos on Instagram, Facebook. Same thing with Kinetic Threads, our custom apparel shop. Now we have Mother Trucker Hat Bar and Boutique. Do custom stuff with that. There's all kinds of. I'm literally easy to find. If you spell my last name right, it's O''Neel. You're gonna find me real quick. First name really is Danny. That's my legal name. Easy to find.
There you go. There you go. Can you give us 3 tips, and it can be something you already said, to get veterans and their families further faster, please, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, stay the course, right? You don't know where you're going to end up, but if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, you're going to be somewhere different than where you are now. So stay the course. The self-care is so important that, I neglected myself, right? I put my team before myself over and over. In fact, I put myself last. I had this thing that said, if I asked you to comprise a list of all the things you love, how long would it take you to get to yourself? And at one point, the answer was never. I never would have put myself on that list, right? But the truth is, I've learned to love myself and care about myself, and that was so vital for me, being a good parent, a good spouse, a good neighbor, friend, brother, you name it. It makes us better. So you're the average of the people you surround yourself with, so choose wisely. You have to have these people in your life who are good for you, not just yes men or women who always agree with you and it's just an echo chamber. Now you need to have diverse ideas and experiences. Even when talking about this stuff, these are my experiences, but they're America's stories. And so if I don't tell them, nobody will know what happened in Slaughter City or with the Hounds of Hell. And that's true, but for me, it's even more important talking about my struggles and victories in the aftermath, right? And so I have these people in my life who are saying, Danny, you're doing God's work, keep doing it. And it may look different in a year or two, and I'm okay with that. I want to be focused on my family more. There's things that I need to do, but the biggest part of that is surrounding myself, with the right people.
Amen, man. I'm glad to be one of those people, my friend. I truly am. You are one of the precious people in my life, I got to tell you. And
Likewise.
Yeah, it is so true, everything you just said. And we could have a whole nother show discussing all of that.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the smartest man in the room.
No.
You want to be around those people that bring you up, that make you want to be better and learn from, because otherwise you're the smartest one. You never rise.
Being a business owner, like multiple businesses, a nonprofit that helps people, I couldn't imagine 10 years ago my life being here, because I didn't even want to live, right? 10, 12 years ago. And so that's why I just want people to stay the course. Like, listen, it can get better. I promise it can.
Yeah, absolutely. Take that step, because how often can you look back and go, 5 years ago, if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have helped these people, or I wouldn't be here, right? I mean, I could go through, I'm 53, man. I could go through like all of these different places and just be like, man, and everything has brought me to where I am now. Thank God. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, God. Yeah. With that said, man, we are so far over. So Danny O'Neill, my dear friend, time the most precious resource we have as human beings. We do not get it back. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending the extra time. And thank you for just being you, man, and just sharing your story, because people need to hear it. And I want to be involved in the movie.
You got it. Appreciate it, brother.
All right, man. And on that note, everybody, we're out of here.
Thank you for joining us on another insightful journey of Your Thoughts, Your Reality podcast with your host, Michael Cole. We hope the conversation sparked some thoughts that resonate with you. To dive deeper into empowering your thoughts and enhancing your reality, visit empowerperformancestrategies.com. Remember, your thoughts shape your reality, so make them count. Until next time, stay inspired and keep creating the reality you desire. Catch you on the next episode.